Part 1, Fading Echoes. The roadside diner sat like a forgotten relic at the edge of a crumbling highway, its flickering neon sign buzzing faintly in the evening heat. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of burnt oil, damp wood, and something faintly metallic, as if the walls themselves had absorbed years of smoke and sorrow. Valentina Morozova stood behind the counter, her faded apron tied carelessly around her waist. A dull kitchen knife rested in her hand, its blade pressing into the pale flesh of a lifeless fish. The fish's glassy eye stared blankly upward, the same empty, unseeing look she caught in her own reflection whenever she dared glance into a mirror. The door to the kitchen slammed open with a rusty creak. "Where is she?" The booming voice belonged to Peter, the diner's owner, a wide, barrel-chested man whose perpetually flushed face matched the red veins crawling across his nose. "You," he jabbed a thick finger at her, "you're the cook today. Our so-called chef drowned himself in vodka again. We've got important clients tonight, bankers from Moscow. Big money, big deals. They ordered fish soup and baked fish. Make it fancy, they said." Peter leaned closer, his breath heavy with beer and stale tobacco. "You screw this up, and you're out, understand?" Valentina nodded silently, clutching the knife tighter. And as she stared down at the fish beneath her blade, the weight of the years pressed down on her chest. How had it come to this? Once, there had been a time when people whispered her name with admiration. Valentina Morozova, the Russian chef who had conquered Provence. Back then, her restaurant, Le Papillon, had been the soul of Aix-en-Provence. Nestled between cobblestone streets and lavender-filled courtyards, it was a sanctuary of culinary artistry. Critics adored her. Guests waited months for a reservation. Her dishes, a delicate marriage of Russian tradition and French elegance, earned her awards few dared dream of. But then came the fire. She could still hear the roar of the flames, the splintering wood, the suffocating smoke. By dawn, Le Papillon was nothing but ashes. The insurance payout could have saved her, but all the documents, the policies, the deed, were in her husband's name. Her charming French husband, the man she had trusted more than anyone. Within days, he disappeared. Barcelona, she later heard, a new life, a younger woman. Valentina was left behind with nothing but debts, scars, and silence. She returned to Moscow believing she could rebuild, but Moscow had changed, or maybe she had. The fine dining world that once celebrated her now turned cold. "You can work in the kitchen," restaurant owners would say gently, "but not in the dining room." Their polite smiles never reached their eyes. Their gazes lingered just a second too long on the faint scars along her jawline and neck. Guests, they whispered, preferred beauty with their meals. Doors closed quietly, one after another. Opportunities vanished like smoke. She sold her knives, her books, her pride. Eventually, she stopped dreaming altogether. And so she found herself here, in a forgotten provincial town, working under buzzing fluorescent lights, preparing fish that wasn't even fresh. By 8 o'clock, the bankers arrived. Laughter spilled into the kitchen through thin walls. Valentina plated the baked fish carefully, arranging each herb like an offering to unseen gods. Then she glanced into the dining room and froze. At the center of the table sat a man she hadn't seen in 15 years. Alexei Voronov. Back then, he'd been a fellow culinary student, flour on his shirt, a shy smile playing on his lips, hands always smelling faintly of yeast and rosemary. He had been her first real love, the one she left behind when she moved to France. Now, he was transformed. His features were sharper, his presence commanding. He laughed at something a banker whispered, but when his gaze drifted toward the kitchen, their eyes locked. Time collapsed. Recognition burned instantly between them. Beneath the surface, later that night, when the clients had gone and silence settled over the diner, Alexei appeared in the doorway of the kitchen. "I thought it was you," he said softly, his voice deeper than she remembered. Valentina froze, unsure how to respond. "You made the fish," he continued. "I'd know your seasoning anywhere." A faint, fragile smile curved her lips. "Life changes," she whispered. "People change." His gaze softened, warm and unyielding all at once. "Some things don't." From that night onward, Alexei returned, at first under the guise of business dinners, then without excuses at all. Sometimes they barely spoke, other times, conversation stretched long past midnight, their words carried by the quiet hum of the empty diner. He told her about his journey, the restaurants he opened across Europe, the empire he built from nothing. She listened, offering pieces of her own story carefully, as if afraid to expose wounds that hadn't fully healed. One evening, under the flickering lights of the diner, he leaned forward, his voice low and certain. "You still have it, Valia," he said. "The talent, the fire. You're wasting it here." She shook her head, bitter laughter caught in her throat. "That part of my life is over." But Alexei only smiled faintly. "Only if you let it be." The distance between us. Alexei stood beside her, his hands buried in his coat pockets, his gaze steady on hers. "You don't have to decide today," he said softly. She stared at the empty tracks stretching endlessly into the horizon. Her heart pounded, torn between the weight of the past and the pull of something unknown. "I've spent so many years afraid," she whispered, "afraid of failing again." Alexei reached for her hand, his touch grounding her. "Then fail with me," he said gently, "but don't stay here." The train's low rumble grew louder, the sound vibrating through the cold iron beneath their feet. Valentina closed her eyes and drew a deep breath. And for the first time in years, she stepped forward. Years later, a different neon sign glowed softly above a sleek glass-fronted restaurant in St. Petersburg. Inside, the air was rich with the scent of truffle butter and rosemary. Tables were full, voices alive with warmth and laughter. At the center of it all stood Valentina, calm, radiant, unbroken. The scars remained, but they no longer defined her. Someone once asked if she regretted the years she had lost. "No," she answered, her voice steady, her smile soft. "Without them, I wouldn't have found my way back." Months passed, and Valentina found herself standing on the platform of the small-town train station, a single suitcase at her side. Autumn wind tangled her hair, carrying with it the scent of wet leaves and distant rain. Subscribe and like so you don't miss the next shocking story. Thank you for watching.